Hello, I am Mystic Michelle from Mystic Wisdom Healing. I am a Reiki master, herbalist, intuitive card reader, space holder, and teacher.
And I'm Julie from Heart Alchemy. I'm a therapist who also does intuitive readings, energy healing, and just generally, I love supporting people on their healing and growth journeys. So, today on this episode, I get to delve into the spiritual path, the process of Michelle becoming all these things that she listed. And it's super fun. Yeah, you're in for a treat. She's a pretty cool person, really fascinating story, and so much wisdom. Let's go. Yeah. That was
So moving forward in my journey, because my journey
yeah.
doesn't stop
I was
there.
gonna say I feel like there's quite a bit more.
There is quite a bit
Okay.
more, and it actually 2019.
Mm-hmm.
We'll jump ahead to 2019, where I actually had a mental breakdown.
Mm.
Complete and total mental breakdown. And I was allowing people to use me. I was in a job that took advantage of me. My best friend was getting very weird about our relationship,
Mm.
and I realized that the boundaries I that she had boundaries and I didn't have boundaries when it came to their relationship, and so we had created this toxic
Mm.
environment for both of us
Mm-hmm.
together. And my boss actually went mentally insane as well. It was ridiculous.
Wow.
So I snapped, and I was about 31, maybe turning 32 soon,
Mm-hmm.
and having this realization that I had wanted to do the eat, pray, love, and
Mm-hmm.
here I am at the bottom of a wine glass, and
Mm.
not doing anything and just sitting in my house being miserable all the time. And so I went into the mountains. I told everyone I shut down. I actually have a Facebook post that pops up every once in a while that says the human you know as Michelle is no longer available, and she is going to be being unhuman for a while until she can figure it out. So leave a message.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I went to Lucky Peak and sat in my car and cried
Mm.
for like five
Mm.
hours and made a decision. And at this point, I had been trying to get a trip going to Ireland. I had been
Mhm.
trying for a couple years, and like everything was just falling apart
Mm.
around me in doing that. And there was this realization in this crying episode that I was not prepared for the experience of what I was going to experience in Ireland. And looking back on it, I absolutely was not
Mm.
at all prepared for what was going to happen when I went to Ireland. And so I started I took Reiki 1.
Mhm.
I shut everybody out. I started working a lot and just trying to run away from my
Mm.
problems. And I hadn't been fire keeping in a while because I had stepped away from that because I felt like called to walk away from that, which was good because I
Mm.
wasn't staying true to my spiritual self. And the woman Misha Kinakili,
Mhm.
she came forward again in my life at this time and
Mm.
was like, "Well, you should come to Reiki 1.
Mm.
It's about self care." At this point, I had one friend
Mm.
that I trusted at all. So like I had lost
Everyone else was like
everyone else was
done.
gone. Like
Mm.
I cut everyone else out, or they cut me out just because of where I was in
Mhm.
my thing. And so I had like one person I trusted and was still trying to be friends with some people, but it was just really not okay. And so I was mostly
Mm.
just hiding from everybody. And so um, Misha invited me to come do Reiki 1, and that was really a huge turning point. Like And that's where I get that definition, that switch of being like walking, being a spiritual healer is walking the spiritual
Mm.
path, like in
Mm-hmm.
general, like that's who you are. And I did that for a while, and that's all I did. I hyper focused on like,
Mm.
this feels good and this is the only thing I can
Mm-hmm.
do.
Mm-hmm. Reiki was the only thing you could do,
Well,
basically, or
spirituality in
oh, I
general.
see what you mean.
Yeah.
Anything that falls outside of what I'm defining as
Yeah,
spirituality is
yes.
like
Anything
okay.
that would fall into the realm that got me to that breaking point
Mm.
is gone.
No
No
more.
more. I can't do
Okay.
any of that. And at this point I was really not only was I hyper focused on the spiritual path, but I also hyper focused on going to Ireland because I was
Mm.
going to be in Ireland for 3 months.
That's a
And
good chunk of time.
oh yeah, I wanted to go and immerse myself in the culture. I
Yeah.
wanted to see how everybody lived and how they did things,
Mm.
and really get to experience what being in another culture
Mm.
is like. And Ireland had always been calling to me since I was way,
Mm.
way young. The book Sweep.
Right.
She ends up moving back to Ireland and living in Ireland.
Mm.
And you know, and so it was always there. And I had planned this trip, and people were like, well, why aren't you going to Ireland? Like, why'd you leave that off your, we know how much you want to go. Why are you
Mm.
leaving that out? And so then I scrapped it and was like, okay, I'm only going to Ireland. And so I was going to tour the whole country, and then
Mm-hmm.
hopefully find some people
Mm-hmm.
and go tour some other places with some other
Mm-hmm.
people. Like, that's what the dream was. But COVID hit.
Mm.
And I had never intended to become a Reiki master.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't going to do it. It wasn't for me. And so my teacher's like, well, just come do Reiki too. Yes, you're going to Ireland, but like, just come get the training. It'll be okay. And then when Ireland didn't happen, I stepped back into firekeeping and then pursued my Reiki masters and got into a circle. And then that re oh, I'm looking for the word, but like that the only word I'm getting is elevated. My
Mm. Expanded.
expanded my
Mm.
tarot, like jump started my tarot reading for other people because I had been
Mm.
dabbling in it. I had a couple things, but there was a specific deck, and I use it for my moon readings.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that it's called the Arthurian Tarot, and it goes based off of Merlin and the Lady of the Lake, and it's a very Celtic
Mm-hmm.
deck, and it's actually set in Ireland, the intentions of Ireland and the land of Ireland. And um, so that propelled, I don't know, that like moved it forward
Mm-hmm.
into getting into that and like actually doing random readings for people I didn't know instead of just doing it for myself
Mm-hmm.
and for other people. And then it's just kind of all grown and blossomed into where I am now, especially after going to Ireland. So I ended,
Yeah. When did you get to go?
so I got to go in just last year. Yeah, 2022,
Mm-hmm.
May of 2022. And I went with a group of women. I didn't know who they were, but
Mm-hmm.
I went with them, and the experience that we had was like drinking spirituality out of a faucet hose, like out of a fire
Wow.
hose. Like it was just
Oh my
like
goodness.
we had all these experiences about the way past lives that we had lived together,
Mm.
vows we had taken, like all this crazy stuff. And it's way too much to explain, but we created a circle actually after that
Mm.
that meets weekly because of all the stuff that we're trying to figure out, and like how we're supposed to support each other. We're from all
Wow.
over. We've got someone in Canada. We've got someone who lives in Ireland who's in our circle. We've got Washington, Oregon, Virginia,
Mm.
Nebraska. I mean, we're all over the place.
And the circle continues
This circle
currently.
continues.
That's
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah, and they're amazing women. And I'm the youngest, and it's
Mm-hmm.
sometimes kind of weird, but they're like, you fit right in. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I fit right in.
Mm-hmm.
But we all had this shared experience, and it was life altering. You know, when people talk about like having that like moment that really just like the downloads that happened
Mm.
while we were in Ireland about what we were supposed to do, and not necessarily what we were supposed to do, but or who we were, who
Mm.
we are, and how to perpetuate that forward. Like,
Yeah.
I
Wow.
don't know if that's the right word, but like how to move forward in our own sovereignty of who we
Mm.
are.
Mm-hmm.
So that really excelled a lot of me being where I am right
Mm.
now and making the choices. And part of the reasons why like I stepped back from doing firekeeping is because even though they have it in Ireland,
Mm-hmm.
there were things that weren't quite aligning the same way as what my practices are now. Not in a
Mm.
bad way. They're nothing that they're doing is wrong. Nothing I'm doing is wrong. It's
Mm.
just different ancestral lineages that I'm following now, like the
Mm-hmm.
ancestral path work that I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't always quite line up exactly the same. And it was enough that my guides were like, we need to look at something
Mm.
different. We need to do things just a little bit differently now.
Like your guides are calling you to
To
stick
step
with the ancestral lineage more
of Ireland.
of Ireland specifically. So it sounds like when things that you're interacting with kind of take you away from that, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, course correction. Not wrong, not bad, just not quite
Where
aligned for me.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that like I think that's something that's really important to recognize because when you're on this becoming a spiritual worker is that there is a lineage and you might not know what it is
Mm-hmm.
when you start.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there are lineages that you can follow. There's so many different things.
Mm.
And what's really cool is when you start looking back at them to see how many of them connect,
Mm.
but they all have their own little practices that just slightly make it different.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about it.
Yeah. So it's all about what you feel aligned with.
Yes. And what feels good. I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
part of that intuition of
Yeah.
yourself, of knowing what is aligning with you, what feels comfortable. So, like, in to put a little example of, so in the Celtic tradition, um, when you have like Imbolc, which is in
Mm-hmm.
May,
Mm-hmm.
it's done by the moon, and that is actually the first day of summer. So it's not the summer
Mm.
solstice. Is
Mm-hmm.
it, the summer solstice is actually the middle of summer.
I always think summer solstice is such a weird. Yeah, it feels it is the middle.
Yeah,
It's the height of the sun, right?
yeah,
It's the longest day of the year. It doesn't feel like the start of summer.
yeah.
So interesting that we kind of
I know you and I end up
yeah.
following a lot on the same like
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's just interesting and it's not something I've thought a lot about. I've just kind of noticed. And then so when you bring it up, I'm like, yeah, right?
yeah. Yeah, and it was something that like someone asked me, they're like, well, is it really that big of a deal for you to celebrate the beginning of summer at the solstice? And I said, instead of doing it in May when
Mm,
I said it is because it doesn't
mm,
feel right because it's
mm.
not. I'm
It's out of sync.
welcoming. Yeah, it's out of sync. I'm
Yeah.
welcoming in an energy that is already here when we're
Yeah.
actually saying goodbye to this
Yeah.
energy.
And I hear you. Like, maybe it's not a big deal in the sense of nothing bad's going to happen, right?
Yeah,
But, like, at the same time, what I'm hearing is your, and may I be so bold, your calling right now is to be as aligned as possible with these traditions and the lineage, which includes being as aligned as possible with the rhythms of the earth, the rhythms of our planet circling the sun, and
yeah.
all these things, rhythms of the seasons. The more in tuned you are with that, I'm imagining the more aligned you feel spiritually, the more grounded you feel.
Well, not only the more grounded I
Mm-hmm.
feel and the more aligned I feel with my spirituality, but the more I notice changes in my
Mm.
thinking, the more I'm noticing patterns. in who I
Oh.
am and the changes that I go through on a
Mm-hmm.
yearly process.
I see. So it's like attention and attunement to that
Yes.
results in some deeper, clearer attunement within.
Yes. Yeah, it is, and it allows me to give myself more grace when I realize
Mm-hmm.
that my body is not failing me, it's following the seasons.
Yeah.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
so in the middle of August, or somewhere, I can't remember the exact date, but in August is when you we switched to the fall
Mm-hmm.
was, and I can't remember the name yet because I'm not as good at, I'm still learning them all.
Mm-hmm.
The cross quarter celebrating days, and that's the day we start going into fall, and
Mm.
it was really interesting this year to watch that happen, and to watch not only myself but everyone around me, and how their verbiage was changing, how all of a sudden they were losing that go go go, how they were
Yeah.
starting to, like, they still wanted to go and they were trying to wrap things up, and they were just trying to, keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what that fall is like, is that starting to slow down, collecting the harvest. And so it was just
Mm.
really interesting to watch as people started to align with that. And I was like, we don't even know how attuned, even when we're not a,
Right.
when we're not even when we're paying attention to it, how close we are. And it's like this shedding that happens, the shedding
Mm-hmm.
of ideas that we have and these
Mm-hmm.
cycles that we go through. It's been really fascinating as
Yeah.
to watch that happen with people.
I'm just remembering how I was feeling around that time, like not even really aware of this concept. Yes, I've read about the okay, solstices, equinoxes, and the cross quarter timings
Hmm.
and things like that. I have a really cool book. I think it's called the Celtic Prayer Wheel or something.
Okay.
I'll share it with you. It's really beautiful. But it speaks of those seasons and changes. I just never really studied it or followed it closely enough to really pay attention, but I've used some of their prayers and meditations and things that I think are so beautiful. Um, but I was noticing this year, I was just feeling like it was, as fall approached, I started feeling more, um, it's like I actually was feeling more wanting to focus on being productive, but wanting to focus on being productive in more measured, grounded ways, and kind of focusing in and settling down and being a little more like tidy and um, structured in my life. Because this summer I was just like, woo, whatever, like just traveling as much as I could in the weekends, and then like having not as much structure as probably would have been helpful for my growing business, all these things. But I needed it. I just wanted to expand and like be free, right?
Yeah.
And then as fall was approaching, it was like end of August, I was feeling like I need to kind of, I just felt like, this has been really fun, but like, oh, I just want to focus and hunker down and like, yeah. And I attributed that to, well, there's like the collective energy around here of school's back in session,
Oh,
and
yeah.
my patterning of so much of my life of, well, oh, school's starting again. And that excitement of like refocusing and preparing for something different in a season change. So I was just like, oh yeah, it's probably just that collective school energy. Like,
Well, yeah, well, and then there's that like change. People are like, "Oh, we've been hot for so long, and
yes,
we're ready to be cooled off. It's going to be
totally.
sweater
Yeah.
season. It's going to start raining. I don't have to leave my house." Like, so
It's
there
like
is that
we need that
collective.
rest after
Yeah,
the wildness of the summer, I think.
but think about it. Like, we created this rest,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, we created this idea
Mm-hmm.
of having this rest after a wild season.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
But did we create it, or was it something that has just evolved and changed and we don't
Mm-hmm.
even know why we do it
Mm-hmm.
anymore?
Well, especially I'm just thinking of, in the northern hemisphere, for example, it's like, well, and in our 4 season approach
Yeah.
in most of our country, and in, well, I don't know as much about Irish climate, but just the kind of planting seasons and things like that. We think of like fall as harvest time,
Mm-hmm.
but then we use that harvest to, of course, like enjoy now, but also prepare for the winter
Settle
where we don't have
in.
to work in that way anymore. We settle in, yeah, and then it makes sense that there would be that shift,
Yeah.
but we just,
We'll even
yeah.
think about like what the farmers do. So the
Mhm.
farmers are preparing for that rest season. They're
Mhm.
preparing so like they'll actually sow seeds that are going
Mhm.
to be in the ground over the winter
Mm.
time. There are some winter plants
That
that
can grow,
I
yeah.
don't know enough about I've been here for 20 years. Don't know enough about
Mhm.
agriculture to really understand everything they
Nor
do.
I.
But I am familiar enough to know that there are some winter plants that they'll do.
Mhm.
But there are some seeds that they'll put. And I mean, even in home gardening stuff, they'll
Mhm.
talk about when you should
Yeah.
plant stuff and like planting stuff in the winter because it's gonna grow. It's gonna
Mhm.
really get in there deep in the winter
Yeah.
time.
So interesting. So you, in following this spiritual alignment, this earth alignment, this connection and attunement with the seasons and the rhythms. I know you've mentioned before that you've been um, very attracted to herbalism and things like
Hmm.
that. I'm imagining that is another beautiful way to keep you connected with earth and rhythms and that kind of energy.
It is, yes. I do herbalism very differently than I've seen people
Mm-hmm.
doing. I don't think there's anything wrong with people the way they do it, but just as much as I feel that you're supposed to be in rhythms with the seasons, I
Mm-hmm.
also feel that you should be in rhythm with the plants that are around you.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, people are always asking me about these super exotic herbs from all over the
Mm-hmm.
place, and I'm just like, you know, that stuff that grows out of your backyard does exactly
Mm-hmm.
the same thing. You know,
Mm.
like we get so focused on all these cool things from countries that have been never got rid of the practice,
Yeah.
and we've stepped away from the fact that herbs grow very specifically for you in whatever climate you're in, and so things grow specifically because
Hmm.
that's supposed to support you in where you
That
live. Like,
climate.
yeah.
That's a really interesting point because I'm just thinking about, okay, what's something I include? I don't know if it would be considered herbal or not, but a plant, basically a plant root. I use like maca
Hmm.
root in my cacao that I have in the mornings and stuff like that. But um, it's like, what is that for? That's from Peru.
Hmm.
It's supposed to be really good for hormone balance and energizing and things like that. Is there something local that would be giving me the same benefits but better for me?
And that you could grow in your own garden.
That would be really cool.
And then that like does the trade thing. So
And then it's less impact on the whole environment, all these things,
yes.
local. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Yeah, like the one I always like to do the comparison of
Mm-hmm.
is because it became a craze and it won't grow here. It won't grow in the United States. But uh turmeric.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know
Sure.
turmeric won't grow here.
Yeah, it doesn't grow in the United States.
I use that regularly.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay, fair
And
enough.
my understanding is that's one that does not grow in the United States.
Huh.
And correct me if I'm wrong. I love learning, but from my studies, turmeric will not grow in the United States. But do you know what does grow in the United States that has all the same benefits?
What?
A cayenne pepper.
Oh,
Does
okay.
even the blood sugar. It has all the same, or
Oh,
the blood pressure levels.
uh-huh.
It does the same thing. It helps with
Wow.
arthritis. It helps with all these things. It helps cure sore throats. It
Mm-hmm.
helps with stomach ulcers. I mean, it does so many things, and you can actually still grow it in your backyard.
Okay.
And the comment I get the most often is people are like, well, I don't like cayenne pepper because it's too hot.
Mm-hmm.
there's actually a benefit to that heat.
Yeah.
And they're
Mm.
just like, what? And I'm like, okay, so here's what happens. So that spice is so intense. And so people end up, because it's too hot, they end up taking it in a capsule form. But you're not getting all the benefits because those capsules don't dissolve until your large intestines. So like
Mm-hmm.
they're just kind of floating through there. So if
Okay.
you're trying to do it for stomach ulcers, it's already past your stomach. It's in the
Okay,
wrong
so you
spot.
need to not have the capsule form if you have
Yeah,
stomach
you
ulcers.
want to
Mm-hmm.
actually do it in a
So
different
cayenne
way.
pepper helps with stomach ulcers.
Yes.
And I'd think this is maybe naive, but ooh, that spiciness. I might want to avoid that with stomach ulcers, but maybe that's a misunderstanding.
And I think it is. And I don't always have the right words for things, but
Mm.
my remembering is that cayenne pepper will actually help create that lining. So it actually helps
Oh
the liver
wow.
like create that mucus, which will
Whoa.
actually help build up. But the other thing is, because of the heat of cayenne
Mm-hmm.
pepper, when you take cayenne pepper and you go, oh my God, that's so hot,
Mm-hmm.
your brain's doing the same thing. And it's like, something's happening somewhere. We
Yeah.
need to go put that fire out.
And it's creating more mucus.
And it's creating
And tears.
more cells to go down there to take
Yeah.
care of, to like recreate. Like, it's kind of like when you get a cut, like it sends things down to help heal it. And so if
Mm-hmm.
you're on fire, it's like, what are we going to do? We got to go
Yeah.
save that thing. And so it's actually sending more help and aid to your body because of the fact that it's so hot.
That is really interesting. Really, really interesting. How fun.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
There's just so much to learn. And I think for me, with herbs and things like that, it's like a slow learning process. I try to like incorporate things slowly and not overwhelm myself, because just like with spirituality, anything with like nutrition or really anything health and well-being related, there's so much out there. There's so many different perspectives, and that's probably because there's so many different types of people on this planet from different backgrounds and cultures and climates, and we need to find what aligns with us. And I think for me, it's sometimes a practice of like drowning out, maybe seeing if I can drown out the noise of hearing what I should do. Oh, you should
Mm-hmm.
take tons of this, or you should avoid this, or whatever. And coming back to, okay, what feels aligned for me? What can I learn from experts around me who can tell me that exact thing? Right?
Yeah.
Like, actually, maybe you should have some more cayenne pepper and, turmeric, sure, whichever, but cayenne pepper is more accessible here. Like having those, like calming down and being quiet enough to see what actually resonates with my body, what makes sense, what um maybe intuitive healers I can connect with. And
Well, that's where
yeah,
meditation comes in,
yeah,
right? Is like
totally.
quieting down that. Um, I, in my circle that I'm in, we just did this whole thing where we sat down and we talked about the gifts that we held
Mm-hmm.
and what we saw the others hold.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really interesting, because we're all so different, but we
Mm-hmm.
all may be healers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we're all so different because we can't all do the same thing. We all came
Mm-hmm.
down here with different gifts. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and part of the herbalism for me is like I connect with the spirit of the plants.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I don't know the names of the things, because I'm actually not working with that part of it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
actually working with that connection of the
Mm-hmm.
plants. And so I think, yeah, I could go on to this whole like thing of what I think about like when we get so overwhelmed because there's so much to learn, and it's amazing. It's also amazing, but at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, I mean, I went down many different, like I did astrology, like I
Mm-hmm.
did crystals, like I did the sound baths, like I looked at all those things,
Mm-hmm.
but I really stuck to what actually called, and what numerology I looked at it all,
Yeah.
and like then was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to really focus on any of this because
Also complex.
it's all so complex, but there's just so much there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many of us that if we would just wake up and start doing this stuff, that
Mm-hmm.
we wouldn't have to know it. Like one person wouldn't have to know it all.
Mm-hmm. I feel you. It's like
Because we all have our gifts.
we all have our gifts, and there's I think the difference between kind of like from that mental space of being like, oh, I should try to learn all this stuff because it's interesting and because it's helpful, and if I'm going to be a good healer, maybe I should know all this stuff, right? But okay, that's fine. That's a way you could go. That sounds exhausting, and I find myself in that sometimes where I'm like, oh, if I just get one more training or learn this or something, I'll just be so much more effective as a healer or as whatever, however I'm serving or whatever capacity, or I'll just be so much more healed in whatever way, right? So, but when I come down to my heart, I'm like, well, what do I feel like doing? What do I feel drawn to?
Yeah.
What makes me feel like light and expansive and something that I'm naturally going to be drawn to? It's usually fairly different from what my brain thinks I should be. Maybe not my brain, my ego, I guess.
Brain, ego,
Brain, ego. There's different part. Brain is a
potato,
complicated
potato.
thing. Yeah, like, but from that ego space, I'll call
Yeah.
it that. From that ego space of like, what should I be doing versus, oh, like what's aligned, what's calling, what feels regenerative to me, and what feels
Yeah.
exciting to
Well, and I want to make a definition too of like something that feels aligned
me.
almost feels like being hugged. Like it feels
Oh
like you're
yeah,
being comforted, right?
comforting.
Like it's
Yeah,
not like this aligns because I'm gonna say it aligns. It's because it actually
yeah. Feels.
feels like you're being held in a
Mm-hmm.
safe, like at least for me, that's what when I talk about being in alignment, that's
I like that description. I think often I speak in terms of like feeling expanded or
mm-hmm.
feeling constricted.
Mm.
But I think that if when you say like I feel hugged, it's like maybe the alternative of that is feeling like
Like
kind
you
of
don't want
like
anyone to touch you.
yeah, like like oh, like that
Yeah.
versus like yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's I'm either hugged and expanded or I'm kind of
Rigid and
rigid and constricted and not feeling
yeah.
flowy, and yeah, yeah. I think the more we move from that space of a warm hug
Yeah.
and like letting ourselves even arrive there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and think about it, you said something about doing all these things to make yourself a better healer. Wouldn't it make you a better healer if you truly understood this one thing you were doing?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind
Absolutely.
it's kind of
Yeah.
like when you're going to school and learning a subject. If you like only learned English and you like continued and went on
Mm-hmm.
and only learned English, you might not know math so well,
Mm-hmm.
but you know
Yeah.
English.
Yeah.
And so like I would prefer personally if I was to go to a healer somebody who really sat in the
Mm-hmm.
energy of
Mm-hmm.
what they are, because then I can go to other people,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like, and I can experience other things, and
Mm-hmm.
like, but you're sitting with someone who really got into
Mm-hmm.
connection with what they're doing.
Yeah. Which like I really like that you described your journey of like looking into all these different things and then figuring out what
Hmm.
things align most with you. Because I notice with me, sometimes um, as a therapist, oh my
Hmm.
gosh, there are endless sort of trainings and certifications you can get, um, and that's fine, but that doesn't necessarily make me better at being a therapist. Can give me more tools to use, which is really exciting. But if I'm just doing it from a place of I should be better for some reason, but whatever better means,
Yeah.
this is to alleviate imposter syndrome
Yeah. Yeah.
ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, um, yeah, if I'm just doing it from that place, that feels yeah, it's a scarce place. It's a place of like, oh, I have to do this to prove myself and to show people that, oh yeah, come to me because I do all these different things. But what I do really like is following what I'm interested in
Yeah.
and then seeing where I go with it, because I might follow something and be like, oh, I don't want to be only that. I like having kind of like a mixed bag of things I do, but as long as they're coming from a place of alignment, like, oh, or I've learned enough about this that I can take what's resonating with me and then also take what resonates with me from this thing that I've learned about and see how it all integrates within me to
Yeah.
kind of then like basically apply to myself and apply in whatever service I'm providing or session I'm having. And kind of how I've done it. And I think it's a bit of a, I don't know why I'm picturing like a washing machine. Like,
Yeah,
this
just a
kind of
mix.
like throwing a few different things and seeing how it all flows. But what I appreciate, I think you've done that. And what I appreciate about your story is there's like a through line. You always felt connected to that Irish lineage, Irish traditions. And that's, it sounds like that's super aligned for you, helps keep you focused and gives you a really healthy type of structure to keep going. And so I'm interested in that, and I'm curious how I'll come to that in my own life. Like what structures may be helpful for me as I'm like in my washing machine.
Well, I mean, it takes time. If you think about it, oh, I'm going to do math. I'm going to age myself for a
Mm.
moment. You think about it, it's been 23 years
Mm-hmm.
of since the time that I attempted
Yeah.
suicide to
Mm-hmm.
now. So like, and that's when it started. So it took me
Mm-hmm.
23 years. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it's always going to take everybody that long, but it takes time and it takes
Yeah.
knowing, where you want to go and what you want to do and really being comfortable with saying to yourself what you're okay with, if even if it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't align with what other people are
Yeah.
thinking.
And I think that I really like that you just said that because that helps sum up something for me that seems to be a theme that I've received from different teachers and healers of ultimately it's about trusting myself.
It is.
Yeah, trusting
Yeah.
what's coming
Trusting what's
too.
coming and trusting in knowing that you're going to know what's right for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
I-
it's okay if you don't always know immediately.
And
It'll
yeah,
come out.
you've got
It'll
to you
move.
got to work it out. For
Mm-hmm.
me a lot of the times too I have to focus on um whether or not I'm in that rebel phase.
Mm, totally. Yeah. It's like, am I reacting to something or am I responding?
Yeah.
Am I like,
Am I being a rebel or a
yeah,
bad student just
yeah,
because this is like making me feel something I don't want to feel?
yeah.
Or am I really needing to make a change and I'm hoping someone else will tell me?
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yeah. Totally. I
Yeah.
get it. Because sometimes we have that resistance
Yes.
or that like, you can't tell me what to do,
I
right?
can do it.
My own sovereign human, right? But and that's okay. That's fine. That's a perfectly natural reaction to have when something feels like it's cramping your style or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but if we can sit with that and not just react based on that, what am I resisting to? Is this kind of like throwing a little baby tantrum right now
Yeah.
because I'm resisting what actually is going to help me most? I think often that can be. I can think of some teachers that have had resistance to that resistance teaches me something,
Yes.
especially if I kind of lean into it and like don't judge the resistance, let it happen, get cranky about it if I want, but don't run away from the thing that's causing the resistance. Okay.
Well, and that's where it becomes very important to become in tuned with your body so that you
Yeah.
can recognize the vibration. And I'm going to use
Mm.
vibrations for lack of better term, but
Sure.
the vibrations that you have in that alignment. Like, does this
Mhm.
feel, am I being rigid? Am I being felt
Mhm.
like a hug? Like, am I feeling
Yeah.
this because like this really doesn't feel good? Or
Yes.
or is it my ego that is sending me like, no, this really doesn't feel good. You know?
That's so. I think that's such an important distinction. We can have resistance for different reasons, and sometimes it's like my ego's like, I don't want to do that because it's hard and it's gonna require change and work. But my inner self, my heart, my soul is like, that's where you gotta go.
That's what we're gonna do.
Yeah. And other times there's a different type of resistance where it's like my mind is like, oh, I should do that thing, and that's a good thing to do, but something inside me is like, no.
No.
And so that's another difference. It's like a reverse of the same kind of conflict.
Yeah.
That's a practice of sorting that out. Like just sussing out, wait, am I feeling the no from a cranky place? Or am I feeling the no from a that's the line?
Yeah.
Not quite right for me right now. Am I feeling the yes from a I need to prove myself and do all the things and FOMO and
Yeah.
or am I feeling the yes from that feels good?
That's what I want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel like anything, any sort of teaching on how to be spiritual or how to live life to your, according to your own
Authenticity.
truth, authenticity, all that stuff, it can kind of be distilled into that practice of like tuning in with what actually feels aligned. What does that even mean? How do I even sense that? Which takes practice and presence and tell you exactly what that would feel like for you. But we have these metaphors of hug or expansion or weird bars or whatever.
Yeah, different vibrations,
Yeah.
different like things that poke you.
Yeah.
You
We
know.
can only just play and try and see and like that.
And that is the
Wrapped into a nice little package.
with the bow.
With the bow. It's not that complicated, but we make it really complicated and it's fun.
Yeah, but it's also because we have so much information to go through.
So
We have so much access to so
yeah.
much information that we have this overwhelm that happens to people.
Yeah. Which I think as humans, like, we love learning, having information, figuring things out. Like, our minds love having it. And so I don't think it's bad, but like you said, we can go straight to overwhelm. We can go to perfectionism. We can go to all sorts. We don't practice that, like, oh, brain candy, to like,
Yeah, but is this right?
yeah, is this the line for me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's something I was gonna say to that. Oh, so like I think this would be a great way to like just kind of wrap up this conversation. But the way that I like to look at it, because we get these terms, masters, teachers, blah blah blah, and everybody gets very serious that I'm a master, and so I've mastered it all, and that's what we're all trying to focus on doing. But I take that word of master to mean that I'm making a commitment to continue to study. And that just means that I'm going to continue to learn and to sink into that element that I'm working. So I'm a Reiki master and I continue to deepen my knowledge of what that is.
Like you're a Reiki master for life.
For life.
Like you're a Reiki student.
I'm a Reiki student. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think I think because even when you get your master's degree, like you still have other things that you're going to go on and learn. I think it's not being a master just means to committing to learning the rest of your life.
Yeah. What a perfect.
I thought so.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for hanging with me in my cozy little office.
Thanks for listening to my story. It's a crazy one.
It's so fascinating. I love listening to people's stories, and it's just so fun.
Yes. And I can't wait to hear your story.
Next time.
Next time. Yeah.
Yeah.